Well, welcome to the program, Chris. I'm really looking forward to chatting today.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Simon, for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to it as well.
I always ask the first question I always ask my guests is, why Treasury and how did you choose Treasury as your career?
So the one thing that I guess kind of led me to Treasury was I was working at RBC at the time, and RBC is Canada's largest bank, and one of the things that I guess I wanted to learn more about was just the flows of the business and understand the business a lot more than others, because what I noticed in talking to my colleagues at that point in time is no one actually understood how the bank came together. And I always felt that Treasury was like the brain of the organization, where you get to see all of the inflows and outflows and the various risk elements of the bank come together, and just have a better understanding of how it all works, both from a strategic and execution perspective. So that's why I moved from. So I was before I moved into Treasury, I was in finance. So I was typical finance background, accountant by training. Moving into Treasury enabled me to just get a better view of the analytical understanding of the business, and also supporting the executive committee in terms of what Treasury was doing. So that's why I decided to move into Treasury.
So just for the listeners, you started your career in Big Four with PwC in the accounting space for 4 years. You then moved into banking with RBC and into CIBC, so 10 years in the banking space before you moved to George Weston 19 months ago as the treasurer. And within that, maybe it's a good opportunity. Just tell the listeners a little bit about George Weston and how the group works, because it's a behemoth and quite fascinating because it covers all the aspects of Treasury, really.
Sure. Just one clarification. I'm the treasurer of PC Bank, so the banking entity. So the way that George Weston works is we have 3 or 4 key businesses, right? So the first business would be Loblaws, which is the grocery retailer, as well as Shoppers Drug Mart. So really large corporate retailer within Canada. A lot of scale within Canada. So you think about through this pandemic, we were actually deemed as an essential business. So, most of the, 38 million Canadians are probably visiting our stores or online. So it's a pretty big scale there. Choice Properties is our real estate investment trust, which owns the underlying properties largely of the grocery, let's call it the grocery retailer. The third kind of peg of the stool is Weston Foods, which is the bakery business, and it's largely in North America. And then where I focus most of my time at this point is President's Choice Bank. So, which is a bank that supports the retailer in terms of providing payment solutions to our clients that are either using a credit card or a debit-like card in the grocery store, or through online channels. So it's a pretty interesting business. I mean, from a treasury perspective, because if you think about the various risks that treasury would manage kind of on a day-to-day basis, like you get to see all of them, right? So you got your interest rate risk in the bank. You have a little bit of that, when you kind of look at potential bond offerings for, George Weston or Loblaws. You have a commodities exposure just through, the inventory in terms of, related to the grocery retailer. You got foreign exchange, because we deal in kind of multiple currencies in terms of purchasing, supplies and inventory, as well as even at the bank. We have various vendors, not just within Canada, but in the US, that we utilize, third-party systems and software, not just within Treasury, but part of the business that exposes to FX risk. I mean, liquidity risk is huge, from the perspective of a bank. Like, you're looking at we look at liquidity on a daily basis. And if you think about it, it's, through the pandemic, and if you're around in kind of March and April, liquidity risk is all we were kind of talking about and all we would have heard about at that point in time. So, from my perspective, a lot of interesting opportunities to kind of look at the whole gamut of potential risk exposures, and then understand, well, how can you help optimize or work around those risk exposures from a Treasury perspective.
And also within the George Weston business, there's commodity exposures as well, right? Like from a food, like
exactly.
Ironically, I've got my podcast after this is with the Australian treasurer of George Weston Foods, so I know the business really well from this side of the world.
So the commodity exposure from a food perspective is massive as well. No, I get that.
So Chris, what would you say have been the highlights of your career so far in your mind?
In my mind, so there's a few. I mean, I think I'm really grateful for the opportunity that I have today. Just being the treasurer of the bank. I think the one highlight, the recent highlight is just managing the balance sheet through the issues that we've had related to the coronavirus pandemic. I mean, that's one. That's a key issue, and just how we've been able to come together, collaborate as a team, collaborate with our board as well. I think that's a significant highlight. I think the second highlight that I would mention is when I was working at CIBC, one of the things that we were really focused on, and that I was responsible in terms of leading, is putting together a 10-year plan for the bank, and really trying to kind of think about, well, what are the particular business cases or strategic initiatives do we want to invest in over the next 10 years to really change the outcome of the strategy at CIBC. So I think that was probably the second highlight, that just in terms of recently. I think the third highlight, the fact that I got, I qualified first time as a chartered accountant. I mean, that kind of, opens up a lot of doors, I would say, for a young person. And, I think it just, it provides you, so either CA, CFA, or whatever professional designation that you choose, provide you with a good grounding and understanding of kind of the basics. And it usually provides you kind of a foot in the door, so that you're able to kind of take on, more challenging, more senior roles over time.
And you've worked across, I guess, a number of industries now. How would you say that Treasury differs between the corporate side, the banking side, and then consulting in the Big Four?
Yeah, so I would say that, just starting with the banking side, because that's where I've really spent a lot of time. There are some differences. I would say that, that the banking side, you're probably more, included within the business, because some of your decisions, just from a funding perspective, may impact the profitability of particular product margins. So it's really key that you have a great understanding of the business, the products, how they're actually designed, what are the consumer behavior elements that you want, or that strategically that the bank wants to kind of execute against, and then how does that feed into Treasury's either funding or capital management objectives. So that's what I would say from a banking perspective, very involved in the business. From a corporate perspective, and I haven't spent all that much time. I've only been here for about 18 months, so I'm starting to kind of understand the differences. I would say that, less is more, simpler is better. I would say just in terms of communication and not so focused on the technical aspects, just try to lay out, communication, like how you communicate with others that are not as familiar with particular topics. The other thing is when you're at the bank, you're not as involved with, investment bankers that potentially pitch you ideas just on capital structure, or, they'll come and talk about deals here and there. But I find that, joining a corporate, you particularly get some very good advice from the bankers. Just from a capital structuring perspective that I guess I wasn't used to. And probably the reason is because, when you're a corporate, you're no longer a competitor, right? So that's part of it. I think that, I would say those are probably the main areas. And then consulting or just audit in general, be Big Four. I think, and this is just from my perspective and when I would have worked there, I think for a person that's young in their career, I think the Big Four is a great, place to learn and develop good habits, right? And really understand, what a particular subject matter area is about. I would say that as you move into banking or move into corporate treasury, there is an element of subject matter expertise and dealing with different problems that you don't always get when you're at a Big Four consulting, because you're not within the tent, so to speak, or you might not understand how do all of these particular initiatives kind of mold together to come up with either a treasury strategy or balance sheet strategy to manage a balance sheet over the long term. So that's how I kind of think about the three.
I'm ex KPMG originally in my career, Chris. So I totally agree with you. I think it's an amazing place to get a good grounding, and you get really good exposure at a high level at a very young age. Right. But you then need to move out and specialise. So I think for your first 3 to 5 years to get amazing experience with big corporates that you would never get exposure to, those senior level people, fabulous. And then from there, get out and get your subject matter expertise.
Exactly. Yeah.
Did you find it a challenge making the move from the banking side then to the corporate side? Was it a really different environment?
I would say the environment, if you think about the environment, typically large bank, large corporate, somewhat similar. I would say that there were some definite challenges just up front in terms of, and I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, just in terms of communication. Like I might, as an example, because you're in the banking space, and I've been in the banking space for a while, I might take something as a given, let's call it, when I'm talking about a capital ratio or a liquidity coverage ratio or something, because we all kind of have the same knowledge base, or we're all kind of thinking about the problem the same way. When you move into a corporate that is diversified across all industries, sometimes it is not always readily apparent when you're communicating, with others that are maybe not as close to a particular topic. When you start to bring it up and you say, okay, well, there's actually a really great capital optimization opportunity in the bank that will potentially help to make our balance sheet more efficient, right? And that'll enable, the corporate, to be able to earn, additional cash. But it's kind of walking through your thought process and trying to understand a little bit more in terms of the audiences that you're speaking to and where they're coming from. But I mean, for the most part, there are actually a lot of similarities at a conceptual level in terms of corporates and banks. I think the level of sophistication typically at banks, just given their large size, scale, and let's call it some of the talent they would attract, there's probably definite there's definite subject matter expertise in particular areas that are probably a little bit more than you would see in a potential corporate treasury area. But I think when you look at a corporate treasury area now, just kind of in the last 18 months, the scope is much broader, right? So then you have to rely on, and I kind of talked about this earlier, just in terms of your banks helping you, potentially through some of the latest thinking on a particular topic. That's what I've noticed. So,
and it is, yeah, I totally agree with you. It's just that they've got so many more people in the environment, aren't they? So the subject matter expertise is deeper and it's a narrower scope, whereas in a corporate, it's a much broader scope. The other thing that I hear come up a lot is, in the bank, it's very much, you are a revenue generator versus in a corporate, it's an overhead as such. And it just, on the back of that, is something that's a different mindset. It's deal focused versus continuously focused.
I completely agree with that too. Just the whole idea of, within Treasury and a bank, and I talk a little bit about this, but it's a strategic partnership where you're actually helping to kind of manage the balance sheet with the business, right? Sometimes in the corporate, it's more looked upon as an overhead or a supporting function. But again, I think just coming from the banks and knowing, some of the initiatives that we actually helped, to steer the business in the right direction. I think there's still a lot of value from a corporate treasury perspective that treasury folks can definitely suggest in terms of particular initiatives to kind of drive the business forward or help to generate additional P&L, right? So
definitely. Chris, what's been your approach to networking over the course of your career and advice for others out there?
I would say networking is probably, when I was early in my career, I don't think I did enough of it, right? And I think that's the one thing I probably learned as I kind of have gotten older and gotten more experience is that networking is really important. And it's not necessarily networking for, let's call it the next role. It's also networking in terms of understanding who your counterparts are at different organizations. And what I've found is by networking with individuals at other organizations, you might have common problems or common challenges, and it actually provides a bit of a support network or an intellectual network to try to help you either bounce ideas or think about things in a slightly different way. So it actually helps potentially pressure test some of your ideas. So I would say now I do quite a bit more networking than I would have done kind of earlier on in my career, and I think it just helps to it diversifies your perspective as well too, because I think that's the one thing that I think is really important as you kind of grow in your career, is not necessarily you're taking on different roles or different responsibilities, because I think that's important as well, but talking with others that have different opinions other than your own, you can actually do pretty well with networking and just getting advice from others that might be looking at something slightly differently than you or completely different than you, and trying to understand, okay, how did somebody arrive at that particular conclusion or opinion is actually really, really important in terms of kind of thinking through a process or a particular problem, and that's something I value. And it's taken me a long time to figure that out. But I actually think it's quite a valuable skill to kind of to grow within a career over time. So,
do you know the crazy thing about that, Chris, is you're not the first person who's told me that. And I think for the younger listeners out there, we call it networking. To me, it's about forming relationships. And
that's right.
At the end of the day, I think it's something that you're very in the weeds and doing stuff when you're younger, and then you realize over time, actually, if I can get out there and build these relationships, it's going to benefit me as well. So yeah, you're definitely not the first treasurer who has told me that if I had my time over, I would network a lot better.
Well, and the other thing too is when you think about it, you build the relationships, you get into a discussion with somebody, right? What tends to happen is you have because you actually get into a discussion, maybe you have to justify your opinion, or maybe you have to understand somebody else's opinion or somebody else's point of view. You actually have a much better understanding of yourself and of the particular topic that you would have actually understood if you just sat there and tried to do it on your own, or you read it in a book. I would say that I'm a big believer of direct experience, kind of getting your hands dirty, but then also trying to learn as you potentially experience different things that come up in your either your role in your life. So that's why relationships are really important. So,
have mentors played a role in your career so far?
Absolutely, yeah. I would say that one of the biggest mentors, recently, I would say in my career was a relationship that I had, and I still keep in contact with him. So CIBC's treasurer, I would say that he's helped. I think it's probably one of the reasons that I'm potentially in the role that I'm in now. Right? I think what he really helped me with was just have an understanding of what are the big issues that one treasurer would really care about on a call it day-to-day basis, or when you're thinking about the plan, or what this how do you think about strategy, and working directly with him for almost 5 years on a day-to-day basis. I think from a mentoring perspective, would have helped me. I've had other mentors in my career, and that it's not always that you're looking for something from a mentor. It's also that you are, and it kind of goes to your earlier point on relationships, right? You might get to know someone that particularly has more experience than you in a particular area, and you might go to them for help or guidance in a particular area. Like, let's say, for example, managing or taking over a team for the first time, where not a lot of the people have direct treasury experience, right? Maybe you can go to a mentor and say, okay, well, how do I plan for this, and how do I set something up so that I'm able to execute against this, and train up the staff, and to be able to provide the support that you need. Like it's actually really important from my perspective and similar to what you're saying, relationships, it's either with a mentor, and sometimes you don't even realize that people are mentoring you, like meaning younger staff, when they might bring something up that you're just like, oh, I didn't really think of a particular topic in that way, and it might expand your thinking a little bit. So for me, I've always tried to be kind of open to different views, and just hear what people have to say. The trick is with mentoring as well, like this is my perspective, my opinion. Don't make it formal, make it informal, and it's just like, and don't always be the person that's going for guidance as well. Like, don't always just, try to go in there and act like it's a normal relationship with a work colleague. And you might have a question, or they might have a question for you, so that the relationship is kind of two-way in a way, in terms of communication. So that's really important. And I know that, that there have been people that have reached out to me, and that's what I've always tried to kind of, tell them and indicate to them, right? Is this is an informal relationship. I could try to, provide you some advice in terms of how I might particularly deal with something, and it might expand your thinking. But think about what I'm telling you, and it might be, the right way to do it, or maybe you can kind of start to challenge my thinking, and maybe it isn't the right way. But that's the way that I've always approached mentoring, and more informal. Because I think if you get into a formal relationship, you know, you find that people are probably not as open, and they probably aren't as honest or trusting. And that's really important from my perspective, just to have kind of that open, honest, communication, because you're not really going to be able to get anything out of the relationship, and neither will the other person, and you're just kind of, stuck between two walls, so to speak, and not really going anywhere with your communication. So that's just my opinion. So.
And I totally agree with you. I like that. Having done this for quite some time now, that the best advice I get out of treasurers is the informal, like you may have mentioned there, sometimes you don't even realize someone's mentoring it. That is the best time to have a mentor, because you're getting guidance, you're getting support without even realizing. And the minute it becomes formal, there's an expectation. And once that expectation's there, I just think it changes the whole relationship. So I 100% agree with you. Informal and just getting the advice and learning. And I love your perspective as well around you mentoring others. Like, one of my favorite quotes is, I put out yesterday actually on LinkedIn with the treasurer at Rio Tinto over in London. And he's got a 29-year-old formal mentor, but he's deliberately done that because he wants someone who's up to speed on technology and the millennial thinking around management. And I thought it was a fabulous, forward-thinking approach to go, you know what, I'm going to get the business to find me a really high-achieving 29-year-old who can really fast-track me on my weaknesses being, millennial thinking and technology advancement.
And that's really important, right? Because if you think about it, your works, people that work for you, or your work colleagues, they're consumers as well. They're consumers, and they might be customers of your business, and they might know things that you don't, right? And they might have spent time in a particular area that they've built up over time, and they might be an expert at that, and you're just like, okay, well, I'd rather. It's all about leverageable capacity, from my perspective, in terms of, pulling a team together and thinking about kind of strengths and weaknesses and opportunities to grow. So when you have something like that, where someone can actually inform you of something that maybe you probably haven't spent time on or spent time thinking, because if you think about it, like your brain is a finite resource. You can't tackle all of these potential challenges or opportunities all at once. So you got to kind of divide and conquer. So if you have people that are able, interested, and have the attitude that might inform your perspective on technology or consumer behavior that is slightly different than the way that you thought, or helps you understand your consumers better, then that's where I am at. So,
and I think in a way that comes back to a good manager as well, isn't it? Like I consistently hear from people that I would rate as good managers is they tend to hire people that are filling a void that they have, or a deficiency that they have, something that's not their strength, and they go for people to bring them in to make sure that their team is better on the back of it. So yeah, I think that's a really important way to manage as well.
That's right. Yeah.
Speaking of which, what is it that you would look for when you're looking for your direct reports, Chris? What are the key things in your direct hires?
I would say, the first thing that always comes to mind, right, is someone that has a lot of energy, a lot of is quite analytical, and that potentially can take on, let's call it, projects or initiatives, run with it, and come back and have a discussion. That's particularly valuable to me, and that kind of goes to kind of my thought about leverageable capacity, in terms of if there's a way that I could spend, let's call it 10, 15, 20 minutes just talking about a particular topic or subject matter with someone, they take away kind of the big, let's call it the big themes, and then they can kind of transform that into something productive and valuable that we can actually use within the team. That's huge. I would say communication is extremely important as well, not just within, treasury finance colleagues, but if you can actually communicate, your message with others, outside of the team, and like communication, relationship management is probably another, that's really important to me. It's hard to, and it's the communication, you can see, through the interviewing process. The relationship management, it's hard to, determine that, through a typical interview process. The other thing that we tend to do that I think is, I've always used this. I've used this probably for at least the last 10 years in terms of hiring individuals, is case study. We use a case study of, based on, and obviously we would, kind of sanitize the particular topic or case that we give, but it kind of gives you, a realistic view in terms of how people potentially think, and not just a written case study, but, giving people an opportunity to work through a particular problem. It gives you an idea of how they might think about a problem. Is their thinking organized? Is it linear? Are you able to understand them? Did the conclusion kind of, fit with the fact pattern or analysis that you would have, talked about? And then, like, how do they arrive at their decision? Because from my perspective, it kind of comes down to, a lot of energy. Do they have a cohesive decision-making process around what someone is doing? And then communication. Those are kind of the big three that I would really focus on. And I don't think, our educational system, at least where I am, sets you up, for something like that. And a lot of it is just, it's either learned through experience. For a lot of people, some people are really great at it right out of, they just kind of hit the ground running right out of school, or right out of kind of their first or second job. But, there are times when, there might be some deficiencies or kind of ways that we might be able to develop, those big three skills. And we also focus on that as well. So that's kind of what I focus on when I think about bringing someone in. And I think technical knowledge is important, but my perspective, and I always do this when there's a new person that comes into the bank, and let's say they potentially don't have a ton of banking knowledge or understands how a bank treasury operates. There's a couple of textbooks that I might recommend, just to kind of give them some good grounding or good footing in terms of can they learn about all these different topics on their own. And what's amazing is, if you kind of think about those three that I mentioned up front, giving them let's call it a 500, 600 page textbook, most of them actually gladly accept it. So you kind of kill two birds with one stone. So you don't necessarily need all the technical upfront. But it's also important that, over time you kind of catch on to these things, but those are kind of the character traits that we look at. So
definitely. What would be the one thing that you've learned over your career, Chris, that you wish you had have known back when you were starting out?
I think the one thing that I think when I first started out, I was probably more a technical expert. Like, I really focused on getting my work right, and let's call it, when I was at the accounting firm, getting my work right and being technically correct. I think what I've learned over time is that's very important. It's very important. I think over time, though, understanding how to work with others, relationship management, it is really important. being able to, I guess, politely disagree, and you might have a difference of opinion with others, and being able to kind of lay that out in a succinct manner is probably something that I think, I would have liked to have learned earlier, or like, and how you might create, potential allies, and potentially, sell your ideas, and bring others along with you. I think those are all things that, you kind of learn as you go along in your career. They would have been particularly valuable kind of when you're first starting out. But I don't think, if you're starting out, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old, that you would really understand those things, and you probably don't have the maturity to understand those things, right? So you can definitely read those in a book, but until you actually go through them and experience them, I think a lot of people, they just have to go through the learning experience and the reflection. And I think that's probably something I would have liked to have learned earlier on. But I think I am quite grateful that, that I would have learned them over time. And I think it's quite valuable that I've learned over time. So,
Chris, what would you say then makes a successful treasurer in the eyes of the CFO, the CEO, the board?
I think, from my perspective, if Treasury is able, I think the first level, let's call it the first level, first expectation is day-to-day operations are they're operating well. There's no internal control issues. You're optimizing your liquidity. You're able to add some value through let's call it your interest rate positions. So just let's call it kind of baseline operational. That's kind of level one. I think level 2, level 3 are, well, how does Treasury become a strategic partner to the businesses, and actually starts to really provide value from a profitability perspective in terms of trading off and informing either management or the board in terms of where do the trade-offs lie. Why do you believe that the risk return trade-offs that you're discussing, or particularly recommending, why do you think they make sense? So I think being a strategic partner to the business is something that really differentiates Treasury, and having an impact directly on the P&L is important. I think, with the way things are going in terms of technology and innovation, I think that's another area that I think Treasury can be an enormous help for the business, just given the fact that, everything is going to hit the cash account at the end of the day, right? Every transaction. So having a really good understanding of that, and how do you enable technology to support that in terms of managing cash flows and helping the business. So,
one last question for you, Chris, and it relates to your last little statement there. How do you see the role of the treasurer changing as technology advances as rapidly as it is?
Like, I think technology. The thing that I've noticed, I guess, over my time in Treasury is sometimes, like I mentioned earlier, Treasury is kind of seen as a support function, and then we're not necessarily the first in line, let's call it, for that technology budget in a particular business. But I think where technology, potentially helps Treasury is the data and analytics that you're going to have, within Treasury to be able to enable business decisions is a key area. I think there are some companies out there that you look at kind of artificial intelligence and machine learning and all of that. I haven't spent a lot of time in that area. That's a potential area as well. But I think what, if you really think about the kind of the basis of Treasury, again, what I was saying, kind of that risk return trade-off, if there's ways that you can use technology to enable a lot of the strategies that you're doing now, in terms of potentially automating, where your data comes from, to reduce any particular manual error, like those things are kind of, table stakes, I would say. So yeah, no, that's what I would say. I haven't spent a particularly like a lot of time thinking about technology. I would say that within the bank, it's pretty important, just in terms of how we think about the customer behavior as it relates to the deposit book. So that's always been within the bank. But then, how do you use that information? How do you potentially change customer behavior? Because you can actually see a lot of tech companies going down this kind of path in terms of potentially changing consumer behavior. So I don't know if it's just a Treasury technology play, but it's also, I think from a Treasury perspective, getting involved, being proactive in terms of thinking about, how can you use technology to either be more proactive in your role. I think that's a huge opportunity. So, but things are always changing, so you just got to keep moving with it. So that's always my perspective. So
I totally agree, Chris. That's the thing, is it's moving so quickly, and COVID to some degree has made that advance even quicker. It's amazing. I think we've gone 5 years in 5 months.
Absolutely.
When I sort of see some of the things that are going on now. But look, it's been a pleasure, Chris. Love chatting with you. Thank you very much for your time, and I'm sure the listeners will have really enjoyed and benefited a lot from everything you've added today.
I appreciate that, Simon. Thank you for the opportunity. It was great talking with you. Thank you.